Let's give it a shot. All I'm going to do is just hold up on the rear remote selector before I put my fingers here. While I slide this bad boy on here. Selector fork is pretty much out of the way. Okay, there we go. Now one thing that we need to remember, the stud here has easy access to the nut and lock washer. Over here on the other side, that's kind of hard, but just imagine on the other side of that stud here, we need to put that, when we start to drive this down a little bit, we need to start to put that nut and lock washer on, because if we drive this all the way down, we won't be able to get that nut and lock washer on there. So we're in good position. Remote selector is out of the way. Let's give her a whack and see what we get. Now we're ready to drive it home. You see my 1-inch fits right in there. And we're driving on the inner race of that bearing, which is what we need to drive it on, back onto the main shaft. And again, I've got my gearbox up on the wood blocks so that that first motion shaft's off the ground, and we're just driving down on the case. Okay, now we need to put that nut and lock washer on. That's when you gotta be. You gotta remember that, or you're gonna be in trouble. Have to take it all apart again. Checking the remote shaft. That's good to go. All right, let's drive it home a little bit more. All right. Tighten this bad boy up a little bit more. Remote's good to go. Okay. Now let me get down here real close. Getting very close to, yep, the dowel's going in. Little dowel pin's going in. Everything's beautiful right now. Let me put the nut down a little bit more. Drive it home a little bit further. Getting close. Okay. Alright, getting a little bit tougher because now we're engaging that third motion shaft bearing. Dowel pin starting to seat just right. So let's knock her home. Okay, getting close. There we go. That's it. Getting closer. Okay. Let me just try driving a little bit more, just make sure. That should do it. Okay, now all we're going to do is that's driven down pretty close. We're just going to put on the nuts and tighten it all the way down. That should be it to putting on the rear extension housing. Okay, now we've put the bolts on and tightened them up, cinched them up just a little bit. When you drive this guy all the way home, you'll notice the difference in the sound like we talked about. The rest of you'll have about maybe a 1/4 inch gap is what I've got on mine. And the rest of it will be tightened up when you tighten up the bolts and nuts on the rear extension housing to seal this guy all the way up. And again, we're going to do it in a crisscross pattern, here, over here, here, over here, so that we don't warp the rear extension housing. Just tighten them down and just a little bit at a time. Keep going crisscross till this guy fully seals up. And that's it to installing the rear extension housing. Okay, I've got the bolts pretty much tightened down all around, and now we're going to do the final torque on them. There's nothing in the specs about the that I found in the workshop manual under the later for the automatic transmission. It has a torque spec for the rear extension housing of 8 to 12. So we'll do about that or a little bit more. Again, this is aluminum, so you don't want to really torque down on it too much. So again, we're just going to go in a crisscross pattern, torque it up. Okay, that's it. The final check all around. Okay, that's it for the rear extension housing. Let me rotate it around for you. You can see our selector lever goes right on in there. So now we're good to go. So that's basically it for the rear extension housing. Okay, next thing we're going to install is the interlock arm assembly. It goes into the rear extension housing in here. It's going to go on your remote selector fork. This piece goes right through there, on there. So we just got to work it in there. So what you want to do is this remote selector rod and fork here. You want to make sure that guy slides right in between there on your as you install it. So we'll slide it in there. All it does, you can see when you're shifting gears through your H pattern, there's reverse, there's your first and second, third and fourth. So that's all that guy does. Okay, so that's all there is to installing your interlock arm assembly. Okay, now we're ready to install the side cover for the rear extension housing, and we're just going to put that on. Again, clean the surfaces, and then on the final clean, I just use rubbing alcohol on the gasket surfaces to clean them up. Here we've done a thin film of grease on the gasket. Also helps to keep it in position when you put this guy on. There's that. Now this cover can go on in both fashions. So the orientation of the cover goes on in this fashion with the hump up towards where this guy's going to come up. So the hump is in this orientation is how this cover is going to go on. So don't put it on like this. You can look in the manuals to get an idea of it also. So we just offer up the side cover, put my bolts back in. Get them started. Tighten them down. Now we're just going to tighten them on down. Again, we'll just do a crisscross pattern. This one's like a valve cover. You don't want to really torque these down too hard. Work that side cover. Just snug them down at first. Again, just crisscross pattern. So just snug them down. That should be good. Final check. That's all there is to that. This guy's starting to look like a transmission now. So that's all there is to installing the side cover there. Okay, now we're going to install the speedometer pinion is what it's labeled as. Here's your speedo gear. Make sure that they're cleaned up. Get that off of there. There we go. Okay, it's going to go in this fashion here. Again, clean the surfaces, gasket material surfaces with rubbing alcohol is what I use on the final prep. And for this guy, what you want to make sure is you got oil on this guy, because there is a seal that this is going to go right up in. So I'm just going to put some oil on it. Turn it around. Put a little bit of oil on this guy. Some oil on the gears. Alright. Fit it back up into the housing. So it comes out the top. There's your seal that we replaced. So this guy's ready to go. Now we're going to take our gasket. Again, gasket's got a light coating of grease on it. Set this on here. There. I'm just going to offer up the speedo gear. Gears are going to mesh in with the on the third motion shaft, that guy right there. Just slide it in there carefully. There she goes. And just tighten up your bolts. That was in. There is no upside down or putting this in. This goes in any way, in any direction. That's that. Prepared. Get my ratchet. Just torque these all the way down. Now remember, this is just plastic, this housing here, so we're not going to really torque this guy down. Just enough to snug it up. You got the lock washers on there to keep it snug. There we go. That's it. Okay. Now I'm turning the third motion shaft and you can see this guy is spinning around. So we're good to go. That's all there is to installing the speedometer pinion. Okay, we're almost at final assembly here. What we're going to show now is just, obviously you're not going to install the remote tower till you install the transmission into the car. But again, we're just gonna, before you install this into the car, just clean the surface real good with final prep with rubbing alcohol, both surfaces, and then use on the gasket, just use grease on both sides of the gasket, and do that. And when you install the remote, you're gonna oil this up and oil down here in the hole. And then when you just install it, all you do is just, of course you're going to be doing this through the tunnel, but this will go on only in one way. Makes sense, since you got your shifter fork. So we're just going to put that on there just for now. So as you're putting it on, you want to make sure that you're going to hit the hole, your bushing hits the hole right in here on the remote tower. That bushing hits right in there in that selector around fork. And then you'll put your bolts on. But what I wanted to do is just put the shifter in there, and we're going to shift through the gears, make sure that they engage correctly. So let me zoom out, raise up, bring it on over this way a little bit. Back up a little bit. Okay, now we're just going to shift through the gears. I'll try to hold the transmission. See if we can get them. First, second, third, fourth. Let's see if I can get reverse.